Hey, what's up? Uh-oh, can you see me? Probably not yet because I know I have an overlay on. I do have an overlay on, and it's a cool one, Chico. Boom, there I am. Hey, what's up? It's Dominic DeAngelo of brassringmedia.com, of One of a Kind with RVD, and of several other things. Rumor and Innuendo. Check it out every Monday through Friday. Um, but here, you're live with me as we talk a little bit about the bad guy. That's right. My all-time favorite wrestler, Mr. Scott Hall. And today let's see, I think he was born in 1958, so he would have been 67 today. But unfortunately, as we know, he passed away in 2022. And man, um, just made me really miss him a lot. I actually put together some video clips here that I will share as well. And it kind of adds me listening back to them and watching. So actually, it was one was audio, one was just completely like audio but pictures. So, but listening back, it reminded me how funny Scott was, and like just how cool he was. He was awesome, man. It's like there's darn good reason as to why I like Scott Hall so much. And like just a lot of so knowledgeable. Like he is one of those minds that is so unique for the business that you put him in the category of guys that he idolized and look up to, from a Jake Roberts to a Barry Windham to oh my goodness, Dusty Rhodes, boom, right behind you right there. And like it just he's such it's man, I mean, you can tell how much, and in a way too, you look at him in a fashion. I got to know Sabu in a lot of ways, and what Rob has said about Sabu, like he's got that passion for wrestling, that pure, unadulterated passion for wrestling, and so Scott always loved to talk about it and was so smart about it all. And I mean, man, you cannot beat a mind like Scott Hall, and the athlete that he was, and just how smart he was at the business. Man, I can't say how. Let's say I have folks in the chat here. We got some folks here looking around. The boss says, "Hey, yo," appropriately. What's up, man? Hopefully you're tuning in right now. I know some of these were earlier on. Team Rocket undercover agent, aka the Sega Souths, says Feliz cumpleaños, Scott Hall. Indeed. Triple E recommends I check out Mike Check with Mr. Anderson, Mr. Kennedy. I actually was thinking, I was like, hey, I wonder if Ken Anderson's doing a podcast. And I was going to reach out to him, but then I saw Mike Check. And so he is doing his own show. Good for him. But Triple E says Scott Hall, Greg Evans versus Samoa SWAT team was cool. If the NWO versus Bloodline, but the version of it, Umaga was still alive, it would have been cool at Survivor Series or the NWO versus Evolution. Yeah, I know. Fantasy booking right there. I mean, everybody goes to the NWO versus DX as like the fantasy booking faction, and rightfully so, because like they were two of the, Click members were in both of them. X-Pac was in both of them. Ultimately, Shawn Michaels became in both of them too. So just a lot of, definitely like fantasy booking way back in the Attitude Era of all things too. That was a big time. Chris Burnell says, hey yo Sasso, can you eat as much as you snort? Then he also adds, Will Sasso said Hall said that to him years ago. And instead of being offended, he rolled. I bet it. Scott has a great sense of humor. There's a clip I'm going to share with you guys here in a little bit where he's where he's talking about his time in ECW, and he busts the balls of the interviewer a little bit nearing the end for a good reason. And there's another clip too I'm playing, but it's it's from a long form interview, and the clip I didn't clip up is him busting Wade Keller's balls too. So it's great. Scott, I was legitimately laughing as I was like getting these clips ready. Good Lord, I have not. Triple E says, has Dom ever partied like Scott Hall? A bunch of wrestlers would say Scott Hall knew how to party. I'm sure he did. And like, no, I definitely have not partied like I was Scott Hall before. I would not be able to do that. Fernando. What's up, Fernando? Thanks for joining, man. Happy birthday, Scott Hall, to the bad guy. R.I.P. Yep. Megan. Hey, Meg Nelson. All right. Yeah, Pittsburgher, fellow Pittsburgher. She does a lot of good work too. Be sure to check out her stuff. You can follow her on X, obviously, at Meg Nelson. So, icon, she says. He totally leaned into his persona. Anyone can see an all black silhouette and know it's him, right? Just that simplicity of that all, too. Can Dom do a Scott Hall impression? Oh my gosh, can I? Hey yo, Chico. That's the best I can do. There's some people that can really nail it. Oh man. Real quick about me and my fandom of Scott Hall, I guess. Growing I got into wrestling primarily at first because of Hulk Hogan. I was 5 years old, 1990. Red and yellow, that was the guy. And so I liked Hulk Hogan, and so wrestling became on my radar that way. Then later on, as a kid, I also remember kind of leaning towards Texas Tornado, aka Kerry Von Erich, and also Junkyard Dog. I also liked at the time too. But then I fell out of wrestling for several years, like probably 4 or 5 years. So like I'm 10 years old. It's like 1995, maybe 96, early 96, probably more 95, whatever it may be. But I remember flicking through the channels and popping up. There was this guy. He had slick black hair. I will preface this by saying my family was like my dad in particular, and then that was bestowed onto me was this almost unhealthy obsession with Dean Martin, like the crooner Dean Martin. And so the family had pictures of Jesus and Dean Martin in the household. That's what it boiled down to. Not that we worship Dean Martin, but we just love Dean Martin. Anywho, I see this wrestler. He's got slick black hair. He's got like this great look. Everybody in that era had, bleach blonde hair, brown hair. Everybody had long hair in pro wrestling too. So there was no really deciphering between that. But like, there was definitely this cookie cutout of a wrestler of what, was the envision of a wrestler. Well, this guy looked different. And this guy, he kind of looked like Dean Martin. And I was like, this guy looks freaking cool as hell. Who is this? Sure enough, it's Razor Ramon. And I became a fan again, big time. And so I remember going to Altoona at one of the toy stores they had. And man, I happened to see a bone cruncher of Razor Ramon. And I still have it to this day. This very figure. This very figure is the first Razor Ramon figure I've ever owned, the bone cruncher. So I got this. And Marcus, my degenerate brother, he got Bret Hart at the time. Funny enough, later on, he would become a fan of Kevin Nash. So that's how I got hooked into Scott Hall. And then I fell out of wrestling for a little bit. And I remember flipping through the channels yet again and seeing Razor Ramon, but he looked a little different. He had black trunks with red blood dripping. And I'm like, that's Razor Ramon. What is he doing? And sure enough, he was in the NWO. I always think that the first match I saw with him in WCW, I could be way off here, but it was like maybe a squash match with like Blitzkrieg. I don't know if he ever fought Blitzkrieg. I really should look that up on Cage Match and figure that out. But like always, since then, Scott Hall has always been my guy. He got me back into wrestling. And then me and Marcus, we would go to our local video store and we'd just start renting videos. Now, initially at the time, Scott Hall was tagging with Randy Savage in WCW as part of the NWO. So Marcus, being my younger brother, he got into wrestling after I got back into wrestling. Are you sure, boss? Boss says Blitzkrieg didn't show up until 1999. I swear he was like in 98. Like, maybe I'm wrong. You might be right, but I'll have to cross check that. That's who I always envisioned Scott Hall fighting in the first squash match that I saw. But either way, Marcus got into wrestling too, as I did. And so he saw that Scott Hall was tagging with Randy Savage. So Marcus became a Randy Savage fan. Well, little did we know, we go to like this another Ames. If anybody remembers the Ames department store, I believe it was Ames, but they had these mini figures, almost like what were they called? Polly Pockets. Remember the Polly Pockets? There was a kid version of that too, a boy's version of that. But WCW made a little pocket thing where you open it up. It was like the big gold belt, and you opened it up, and there was a little mini ring inside. And inside of it were the Nasty Boys, Scott Hall, and another wrestler. Well, it wasn't Randy Savage, it was Kevin Nash. And so and then so we looked him up and we're like, wow, he was Diesel in WWF, everything like that. And here, Marcus became a fan of Kevin Nash because we were big fans of the Outsiders. And so, man, our wrestling fandom was really, really hot at the time. And like, just like everybody else, we were WCW kids first and foremost at that time in the Monday Night Wars. WWF was on our radar, but we really didn't pay attention to it that much at all. Like, we were just obsessed with the NWO, just obsessed with like Sting and like Chris Jericho, the cruiserweights, the whole fun kind of element that they had going on at the time. And, you know, what was next for the NWO? What was going on? And so, Greg Jacobson suggests maybe Hector Garza. That could be it. That's a good guess, right? I'm really curious of what that squash match was that I watched that one night. But like later on, like we got into WAF. I remember going to a friend's house. Shout out to Josh Mercer. And staying for a sleepover. We played Twisted Metal 2. And then the next morning we woke up and there was some WAF program afterwards kind of hyping up WrestleMania at the time, which was WrestleMania 14. And so I saw the incident between Stone Cold and Mike Tyson and all that kind of stuff and being like, whoa, what is going on here? This is pretty neat too. And that got me hooked even more so. Anywho, just like I rode and died with Scott Hall, man. It was just, he was my guy. Anytime he would be in a match, in a segment, I'd be tuning in, I'd be checking it out. And I remember just being so hyped up when the Wolfpack was forming, like the red and black version. I'm like amped up that Scott Hall was going to join with Kevin Nash and they were going to get this new faction to go up against Hulk Hogan. Well, biggest, most haunting day of my pro wrestling kayfabe life was when Scott Hall turned on Kevin Nash at Slamboree 1998. And you can ask Marcus how brokenhearted I was about it. I'm not going to lie. I was 13 at the time and I got a little emotional. Yeah, I was that into Scott Hall, big time, man. So but then obviously, like, you know, Scott Hall had his, like, you know, issues like substance abuse and stuff like that, and, you know, went through his struggles. And man, I felt every bit of pain, like, of being a fan of him, because I was just hoping he would show up on television, hoping he was doing okay. Like, I'd be reading the dirt sheets and seeing like reports of what's been going on and why is he not there and everything to that effect. And oh man, it was a tough time for me as a wrestling fan because I just loved Scott Hall so much, and he was often on television, and they did this stupid, horrible angle where he was drinking and like everything to that, and it was just really tough. And like I remember even like at this, I'm still so into wrestling, and then they go to WWF and everything, and man, like, weird enough, the first pay-per-view Marcus and I ever got, and we didn't buy it. We did not buy it. Usually we tune in and then there's the squiggly lines and we hear it, but we don't see anything. Well, first pay-per-view that pops up for us is No Way Out 2002. And it's the NWO making their debut. Man, I was so excited. So excited. But sure enough, they had the plane ride from hell. Scott didn't last that long. He had that memorable match with Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18. But like the whole NWO angle in the WCW was just, WWE was just poorly handled. Like, I would have loved to see more. I knew they had to pivot because of how much hype or like how much the crowd was really wanting for Hogan to turn red and yellow after WrestleMania 18. And so like Vince just went with that instead of making the most of this NWO angle. And like, it just all kind of fell apart, sadly. But man, but yeah, then, you know, it goes into like 2000, Marcus and I are living in Pittsburgh at the time, and me and a buddy Jim too. We all decided to make a road trip to Philadelphia because guess what? There was going to be Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Sean Waltman all together. And initially, I think it was just pictures with Hall and Nash, or maybe it was just pictures with Hall, and then you could get a picture with Nash too. Well, I chose Hall because he's my favorite. I know Marcus went with Nash, and so we were gonna go. Here, the lines were so crazy and stuff like that. Scott and Kevin and Sean, they all just got together, and you got group pictures with them. And like my picture turned out so blurry, and I was so bummed, and I was like, man, I didn't get a good picture because we were just using legitimate cameras that back at the time. This was like we didn't have like cell phone cameras or nothing like that. It was just straight up cameras. And so my picture was blurry. We couldn't retake it. It was gone. My opportunity. So I was bummed about that. And it was whatever. But yes, my fandom just always stuck with it. I got to meet Hall several times. One was in Philadelphia at the Jake the Snake, Resurrection of Jake the Snake premiere. They were playing the documentary at a theater, the Ritz in Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, kind of near South Street. And so Jake was there, DDP was there, Scott Hall was there, and he was so nice. He was the nicest. Like I said hi to him, like real wise. The film was about to start. He was super nice, and man, just made my day. Made my day. And then I got to meet him later on when he came to Pittsburgh with Kev, and this was before I worked with Kevin on Click This, and so Marcus and I went to Steel City Con. I wore this Dusty Rhodes shirt that actually my dad had made for me for my birthday. And it was an old school Dusty Rhodes shirt. And so Marcus had an NWO shirt. Well, funny enough, Nash had an NWO shirt that said Nash World Order instead. And Scott had his NWO shirt on. And Marcus had his NWO shirt on. I had this Dusty Rhodes shirt on. So I was the only odd man out of the picture. But we were all throwing up the Too Sweet. And Scott, I'll never forget it. He was so amped to see my shirt. He's like, man, that's a sweet fucking shirt, dude. That's a sweet fucking shirt. I was like, thanks, Kev. I mean, Scott. And so I marked out. Look, here's the thing, too. Let me say this. So when I got into wrestling writing and when I started doing like the WrestleZone and the journalism aspect of it all and all that, I made a conscious decision because I know how it is in sports and stuff like that. You do not take pictures. You do not do anything to that effect when you are doing it for work because it makes you look unprofessional and it makes you look like a fan. And so I never did that after the fact. Like, you know, I mean, sometimes I'll make very rare exceptions. Let me say that. I would make very rare exceptions where I would, okay, I get a picture with this guy. And like, so there will be times that once, very rarely will I do that. Well, like, so I disassociated that, like the fan aspect of it all. As much as I am a fan, like he's got to act professional. I wouldn't wear this shirt if I'm covering wrestling. If I'm going to a journalist, like if I'm going to WrestleMania media wise, there's be no way I'd wear this shirt. I'd look like a mark, you know, I would. And so just wouldn't do it. And, but what I'm getting at here is like, so there was kind of that veneer that would be off, and I would interview wrestlers. I interviewed a bunch of wrestlers. It was always I always did want to interview Scott, and I never got to interview Scott. But when I look back on it, I'm very happy in a certain weird way that I never did interview him because I will always remain a fan of him. Like I didn't have to, you know, put up that thing of like, hey, you know, I'm speaking to you. And I would do it. But man, would I be nervous? And number one, I just love being one of Scott Hall's biggest fans. I mean, I can't say that because maybe there is more, but I love Scott Hall. And so, yeah, I named my freaking cat after him. So that was after I named the cat after Dusty Rhodes' daddy. So, but let's get to some stuff here. Let's see. Now I got to upload these clips, and I meant to do this before I started the show. So typically when I put clips up, they'll just automatically play. So let me preface this one. So this clip is from a 2013 interview with PW Torch, Pro Wrestling Torch, and Wade Keller. And this is after Scott was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, which happened in, 2010. And I thought, when I heard part of this clip, I was like, well, this is something that people can learn from, like today in the modern era. And it shows how smart Scott was for the business and how attuned that he is to the product, even in this time. And at this time too, his son Cody was an active wrestler or getting into the business, and so he was very conscientious of that as well. So if you hear Cody, he's not referring to Cody Rhodes, he's referring to his son Cody. And so the topic was John Cena on this, and Scott had some very nice things to say about Cena at the time. I don't know, I'm sure he maybe met Cena at one point or another, maybe after this, maybe he didn't, but he talks about how considerate Cena was with Kev, and I believe too that Cena did actually interact with his son Cody too. But either way, this clip is talking of what today's modern wrestler can learn from watching older wrestlers. So here it is. Let's see if it automatically plays, which it typically will. Here we go.
Study film. Study the matches of guys that you like, or guys that have been successful who preceded you. Study it. I got Cody watching Dick Murdoch, Terry Gordy, Jake, guys that I studied coming up, because sometimes stuff is so old that it's new. I saw Jake do some things the other day watching a match that I have never seen before, and I've been in wrestling a long time. I encourage guys to go old school. Study that old school stuff, because it's so old, it's new. And you can learn a lot from those guys, because I think, like we talked about last time, Wade, the whole Ric Flair era of flat backing and attacking the mat, bouncing around like crazy, has gone by the wayside. And thank God, because that's been a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
If guys learn how to sell now, and how to register, and how to rock and roll, and like Murdoch did, like Terry Gordy did, like Steve Williams does, like sell like big guys, because Cody's 6'8", so I want him to learn how to sell like a big guy.
And that's just forward thinking. What's old is new. And wrestling is so cyclical that, yeah, you go back and watch some of this stuff and you'll see things that people don't do. There was this one spot that was online I saw maybe over a month ago, where I believe it was Vader and Arn Anderson working together. And Vader did the slingshot. Is it the slingshot? Or catapult? It's a catapult or whatever it is, where you have the guy's legs and you flip them up. Well, Vader did like a catapult thing, flipped the guy up. It was Arn that did that. And then he flipped him up into Vader, who choke slammed the guy. You don't see that. When has that been done? Scott is so right in so many ways, where if you go back and watch older stuff, that is going to be new to a newer audience. And so, that's just one of the little morsels that you get from listening to a guy like Scott Hall. Really funny, though. I did want to say this, during the interview, Wade was saying something, and Scott was talking about how somebody did not want to either go on. He's like, yeah, Wade, nobody likes you, Wade. It was just so funny. It popped me. I wish I would have clipped that part up too, because, oh my gosh, he pops me so much. But yeah, it just speaks to the mind of Scott Hall, how great he was in the ring. Now, my brother has gotten into wrestling, and so he has done, and he's very much known for his old school style. And so he has watched guys like Scott Hall. Marcus completely flat out says that he's patterned his punch after Scott Hall. I almost said Heath Ledger. Heath Slater praised Marcus for his punch, and Marcus got it from Scott Hall. And so, watch the older tapes. Do stuff that is unconventional in today's world, and it will make you stand out. So I thought that was a really cool quote from Scott, and a little great insight about it all. Triple E asked, is Razor going to make an appearance? You should have trained him to run in when you mentioned how you named him. Where is Razor right now? I don't see him around. I don't see him. He was here beforehand, before I started recording, but I don't see him right now. He's hanging out somewhere. He might be in my bedroom. Derek, thank you for joining. Happy heavenly birthdays for my favorite bad guy, Scott Hall, and IRP to Mo from Men on a Mission. Yeah, well said, Derek. Completely agree with you there too. Yeah, he's my all-time favorite too. So thank you for tuning in, and RIP to Mo too. I remember one of the tapes I used to get at Farajini's home video was Brawl in the Family, I think it was called. And I believe Men on a Mission were both on that, since so was Scott Hall, who I think wrestled King Kong Bundy. Ryan Woodbridge says, "Hi, bro. R.I.P. Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan." Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Derek Mitchell. One of the greatest Scott Hall entrances was in ECW when he came out to the ring to the Fugees. Ready or not, I suggest anyone that is a Scott Hall fan to check it out on YouTube. 100%. 100%. I wonder if I can get away with playing that on here, as a matter of fact. Boy, you're really putting a bug in my ear about that. Let me see, though, if I can find that. Because I don't think I would get flagged for playing that, to be honest. Here, let me see it. Scott Hall. Just incredible. If you guys have your favorite Scott Hall moments, drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to share them and talk about them. I think, look at this. I think I'll be able to. Oh, it's a 17-minute thing, though. Oh, wow. That's a tag match. That is a match I've actually never seen. I'm trying to see if there's another. Wow. How about this? Let's see if this plays. Oh, that's a 45 minutes. Trying to see if there's like a short clip I can play of this match exactly, but pretty neat. I'll share the link. Man, he's wrestled several people, it looks like. Yeah, he's wrestled several people. All right. Well, here's the clip I do want to share. But yeah, Derek's right. Go check it out. And what's up, Maddie? Did I say hi to you already? What up, Maddie? Maddie's a regular here at the RVD podcast. So also tune into RVD, by the way. RVDTV.com. Help support our show that way. And hit like, share, subscribe. Help us with that algorithm. And Maddie's a loyal friend to us. So let me play this great quote. Derek, you'll appreciate this. You just sent a 2-minute clip. Where did you send it to, my friend? I don't think they pop up here in the YouTube comments. If you're able to, send it to me at dpdeangelo@gmail.com. So my D as in Dominic, P as in Paul, and then my last name, DeAngelo@gmail.com. If you send me the link, and I can then use it, because I don't think it pops up here in the YouTube comments on StreamYard here. But if you're able to do that, no worries if you're not. But while you're doing that, potentially, I'm going to play this other clip I have about him talking about his time in ECW. And wait for the ending. The ending is fantastic. So here we go. I'm going to play this. This is courtesy. We'll find out where it's from. This is from like several years ago.
When you were at your peak, did ECW ever truly make it on your radar?
I did. I went to ECW for one weekend. Just Incredible was like, he was like one of my young boys. Like, I consider Kid my first draft pick, and Justin was my second, back when he was Baldo Montoya. When he first signed a contract with Vince, his first road trip was with me. Like, come on, kid, here, you're driving, let's go. And I just loved snatching up those young guys, and he's really talented, and at that time, he became the ECW champion. And we'd been staying in touch over the years, so I said, well, hey, tell Paul Heyman that I'll come in just for airfare and a hotel. I don't even care about the money, I just want to see how good you are. And I got to go in for a weekend with ECW, and I had a great time. They treated me great, paid me good. I had a good time, and Justin had really gotten better. It was a great thing. That's the same feeling I'm getting being here. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it, I only work with professionals.
He was giving the guy shit. The phone went off. I love Scott. That was great. Speaking of my phone going off, my phone's going on right now. But man, I miss Scott. I think about how he would be in today's world and what has all transpired since then when it comes to what WWE has done since his passing. Triple H really getting in charge and having the reins, and like just thinking about like Kev and the podcast, and like where would Scott be? Like, imagine him being a guest on there, or imagine him having his own podcast or anything. It would have been a really, really cool time to see what Scott would be a part of. And I mean, his ability to contribute to the business was never ending. Like, he worked with Omos. you know, and like had a lot to say about Omos and the potential for him. I really hope Omos takes off and does something because like it just carries on that legacy, you know. Um, okay, so Derek did send me that, but yeah, I mean, I just think about so much when Scott has been able to do for people in the business, and like you look at somebody like oh, here we go. Oh, so this is his entrance. Sadly, Derek, I cannot play this obviously because of music issues. I would get flagged because of the Fugees are playing. I know I would get picked up on that. So sadly, I can't. Thank you though for sending that. That's great. I will share the link with people um, after I format this video and publish it again. But yeah, and I'll be sure to credit the 2 interviews that I did. One with the Wade Keller interview there, and then the Wildcat one as well. I'll send links to that. There's actually a full length live Q&A that Scott did with Wade at the time, where you would call in to PW Torch, and Scott fielded questions from live callers. And so it's about an hour and a half. So I'll share that. And then, yeah, it was neat. That's how I got into more wrestling back in the day, was PW Torch around 2010. And like, I did call in one time when Scott was the guest. And I think I asked, maybe it was 2009. I asked Scott, I think it was about like what match stood out to him besides the ladder match or something as like his most memorable match. I can't remember what it was, but Scott gave added insight that I wasn't aware of at the time, that he said that they did that ladder match in house shows several times, and they had better versions of it than the one at WrestleMania. So Fernando chimes in here. He says, Scott made the 1-2-3 Kid a star, right? Like, that's the neat thing about Scott, is like he knew that like he was over enough that he could put other people over and it would be just fine. And like that was such a memorable moment, not just for X-Pac or Sean Waltman, but like that was a memorable moment in wrestling. Also, you think about the time Scott just straight up lost to Jericho when he wasn't supposed to. He just told Jericho, hey, you know, you'll get the win, and don't tell anybody. And like he went against, I think it was Arn, maybe was the agent, maybe backstage, or like Arn was surprised that happened, and Scott was like, yeah, he knew it was gonna. He didn't care. He didn't care that it was gonna, you know, that he might get potential blowback for it, but he did a favor for Jericho back then. Just really, really cool stuff. And there's so many great stories about Scott that like I'm not thinking about, or like anything. It's just, man, do I miss him? Man, and like I would not be doing this without him, like being a part of my wrestling fandom and who I just looked up to, and making this business so fun and so cool. That's the thing about Scott, is like the cool factor he brought. Like there was nobody like Scott Hall, and there won't be anybody like Scott Hall. He changed wrestling. And like I'm sad too, like to Fernando's point, is the best wrestler to never win a world championship. I always wanted him to win a world title. Always. Like I just did. Obviously, he's my favorite. And like I wanted him to get the credit he deserves. But if you take a step back and you look at what he's done, like he was the crux of the NWO getting started. He started off that whole thing. Yeah, him and Nash were the first to get like the guaranteed money and contracts and stuff like that. And so that them going over there launched like the biggest faction in pro wrestling history. People will make the argument for the Horsemen. Me growing up and having the bias of Scott Hall, I will say the biggest faction of all time is the NWO for me, like in what it did. But like obviously you can make a very strong case for the Four Horsemen being that. But like all that, there'd be no Attitude Era. There'd be no like Steve Austin or The Rock or anybody like that if two big stars like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash did not make that jump and make WCW cool, the cool alternative product that was edgy and exciting. And so that's how I look at Scott Hall's legacy. He's one of the most important wrestlers of all time, in my opinion, and the coolest. So let's take a couple more comments here, and then we'll close this out. Fernando says, it was Scott Hall that recommended Sting. That's right. Great story. Great story, Fernando. Thank you for telling us, reminding me about that. So legitimately, this might have been 2002. And I was at, I think it was a Top Guy weekend. I don't think it was a Starcast. It wasn't a Starcast. It was a Top Guy weekend in Chicago. It's like 2000. I want to say it was 2022. But like we're in the green room with several people like throughout the weekend. It's like a surreal weekend. It really is. Because we're backstage with there's Ric Flair back there. There's Jim Ross, like Jerry Lawler. I was sitting like by like Jerry Lawler. I was sitting at the same table with Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross, and they were just chatting back and forth. It was like just a surreal thing, like to just be. I'm sitting at the table with like these two legendary commentators. Anywho, who is also shows up, but Sting shows up. Marcus actually ends up being Sting's handler for the event that he's going to go out to, the live panel he's going to make a surprise appearance at. And so Marcus is they're talking about Fall Brawl. I want to say like 96 is like the main focus or something. But we're in the green room, and I remember talking about him and Scott together. And Sting was like, yeah, he came up with the Crow gimmick for me. Like, he was the guy. If it wasn't for him, like, yeah, I wouldn't have the Crow gimmick. So that's how much forethought, and Scott pulling out from all pop culture elements like the Crow or like Scarface or rap, hip hop, and him and Kev adopting that into their style and look of the NWO, making it feel like this cool factor. Like, oh man, these guys are bad. Like, that stuff's fake, but those guys are real, you know? And yeah, Derek just mentioned that too. Razor Ramon gimmick was inspired from the movie Scarface, and Vince McMahon never saw it, right? That's it. Boy, that would be great, boss. Any chance of getting an interview with Cody Hall? That would be really cool, you know? That would be really neat. I don't know how much into like it Cody is too much anymore. You don't see him that much, and I know he got hurt and things like that, but I do follow him on Instagram. So but yeah, the potential for Cody, I was always excited to see Cody get in action and stuff like that. And you can tell how much Scott loves Cody and his family and stuff like that. And if you go back, and I'll share the clips, like I said, if you go back and listen to some of these interviews that Scott did, you know, with Wade Keller, you can tell how much he loved his kids and everything too. And man, you'll go back. If you listen to this Wade Keller interview, there's a couple clips. If you listen to it, you will miss Scott Hall big time. Man, thanks for everybody for tuning in. This has been fun. Derek mentions, I'm old enough to watch the Horsemen from start to finish, but the NWO was a phenomenon that helped propel WCW past the WWF. Well, see, thanks for the insight too, because yeah, I mean, I look back and as you know, before my time, and like try to envision how big of the Four Horsemen was, and they were big. Obviously, they were big, especially in Flair country, and you know, WCW and Jim Crockett Promotions and Dusty Rhodes as their rival. And, you know, so there was a lot that went into the faction of the Four Horsemen. But getting somebody that was there and was a part, like saw it, like you did, Derek, you know, kind of puts that into more perspective. Okay, so NWO did have a really, really big impact, you know, and considering what it was for all that stuff. Great show. Any chance for an interview with King of the Indies, Marcus DeAngelo? Well, I'll try to get him at some point. He's tough to pin down, that guy. I was actually going to ask him to maybe show up tonight, but I know he's usually got his kids in bed and doesn't want to disturb the peace, so to speak, at this time. So, Marcus and I, we used to do a show called WCW Rewritten, actually. I was just talking to Marcus about this today, where Marcus, it was all Marcus. And I was the host, and I would be devil's advocate or I'd push back at him. But Marcus completely rebooked WCW from a certain standpoint. I think he started off at Starrcade 97. And then he would start rebooking everything. It was really creative and fun. We only did probably about 8 episodes of it all. And it was going to be popular, but I think Marcus had some life situations change, whether he was at the time, like I think he was about to have a baby. his firstborn, and so I think he had to kind of pivot away. And I think he had job changes and stuff at the time too. I always want to do a show with Marcus, but we'll see. We'll see when that if and when that can transpire. I wonder what we might have. I might have to do some brainstorming with him if he's up for it. He's a busy guy. But cool. This has been a lot of fun. Man, I love talking about Scott Hall and getting back and listening to some of these interviews. It makes me miss him a lot. And so I feel very fortunate that I get to work with Kevin Nash and, kind of help, carry on Scott's legacy along, with that and the little that I do. So Derek also adds, it breaks my heart that so many wrestlers I grew up watching have passed away. I watched Scott Hall from his days in Florida in AWA teaming with the young Kurt Hennig. Yeah, that's another aspect too, is like, it blew my mind when I first saw Scott with a mustache and be like, that's Scott Hall. And like, then you look back and he was like really touted as the next big guy for AWA. And then he saw the writing on the wall and got out of there and went to WCW. And, but Fonzie shares a great story too, that, Scott, when he was working in Florida, like early on as like a rookie, basically, and they were getting him over down there, that Paul Heyman came down and wanted to be a part of stuff. And so Florida Championship Wrestling at the time, whatever, like the Eddie Graham's promotion, like Fonzie and them got Heyman as a manager to be a first-time manager. Like, not for Scott. I can't remember who Tombstone, the wrestler Tombstone was who Heyman managed, and it was against Scott Hall. And Scott Hall ended up choke slamming Heyman, a young Paul Heyman. And Fonzie was the referee at the time. And Fonzie's got a picture of Paul Heyman laying down and Fonzie like over top of him after that moment. So, but who gave him that choke slam? Scott Hall. So, Derek, thanks, Dominic, for a great tribute to Scott Hall. Definitely will check out more of your shows. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate you coming in and joining. Yeah, you can brassringmedia.com. So like this channel, there's going to be some changes to this channel, by the way. I'm excited about those changes. You'll see what's to come. Some fun stuff, but also rvdtv.com. I go live with Rob Van Dam every Thursday, typically. This week, it looks like we're going live Wednesday night. So mark your calendars. And get ready. Go to rvdtv.com. 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is typically when we go live. Me and Rob, we do a weekly podcast if you're not aware of it. And so we have a lot of fun doing that. And so be some fun stuff to talk about. So be on the lookout for that. But yes, Triple E, I'll answer your questions here at another time because there's some changes coming. But some fun changes, positive changes, and everything to that effect. So it's going to be pretty cool. But cool. Thank you all for tuning in. Happy birthday to Scott Hall. RIP to Mo. And I want to also just wish well to the legacy of Tristan Nash as well, who passed away, a couple years ago as well this week. So, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody, Kev and everybody there. So thank you all for tuning in. And hey, I'll see you next time here on Brass Ring Media. Chico, oozing machismo. I wish I had a toothpick.